PS5 stuff, so there's been a lot of work in backporting games at the moment. We had the release of the backport payload from BestPig, which included patches to patch system libraries, and these are system libraries for higher firmwares like 10.01 that essentially can be patched to remove dependencies that would stop those libraries from working on lower firmwares that would cause them to crash. So these patches remove those dependencies, allowing those system libraries to be loaded on the older firmwares, and if we can sideload those by using the backport payload, which effectively patches those libraries in when you run the game, it can allow those higher firmware games to run on lower firmwares. Now, the initial release of this project supported firmwares down to 7.61, which also included 8.x firmwares. We now have patches added to support 6.x firmwares, so you could patch the system libraries here for 6.x and be able to essentially backport your games down to 6.0 as the lowest possible firmware here. Now, beyond this, we're also seeing some patches being released for 5.x and even 4.x firmwares that are being worked on, so there's games that are being backported as low as 4.x firmwares. And in fact, we've just recently seen this post here from BestPig saying not sure this is intended firmware for this game, Astrobot running on 4.03 soon. And in here we can see a video shared showing Astrobot being loaded on a 4.03 console and it being patched using the backport payload. And you can see it here actually loading on 4.03. Now, we've seen this before, where it was able to be loaded on an older firmware, but when it came to actually loading in-game, it would crash during the loading screen. But in this case, you can see it actually manages not only to boot the game, but even get past the loading screen and get into the game here on firmware 4.03, which is an incredible achievement, considering the fact that this game usually has a minimum firmware requirement of 9.0 in order to run this game without a backport. But you can see BestPig has got it running here all the way down on firmware 4.03. And I guess we'll see if they'll go even further back to 3.x firmwares or 2.x firmwares to get games running. Now, we've also got auto-backporting tools released recently that aim to automate the full backport process, as some games need to have the eBoot patched or the SEE modules patched to target older firmwares besides the backport system libraries. So first we have the auto-backport from NASCII, which is a Python script that can decrypt the modules, apply the downgrade scripts to them, and then find those modules so that they're then ready to be loaded on the console itself. Since then, it's also been implemented into the YouTube Jailbreak web UI, so that you can also run the same backport script from the web panel if you prefer. From there, also EchoStretch has released a backporting script that he's using to patch the modules, and we also have this backport kitchen tool, which adds a graphical user interface to make it even more user-friendly to try and backport your PS5 games. Of course, your mileage may vary depending on what game you're trying to backport and how low the firmware you're trying to backport to is. So those are the updates there. We also have a new KStuff build that EchoStretch is working on called KStuff Lite. And the idea here is to try and effectively remove any bloats from KStuff to make it more lightweight and still work as normal. And also, support has been added for test kits and dev kits so that they can use KStuff as well. And beyond that, he's also working on trying to port it down to firmwares as low as 1.x and 2.x as well there with KStuff. And then beyond that, we also have some updates to the whole ShadowMount payload, which is that it is effectively being discontinued now. So Void Whisper saying here that I'm officially pulling the plug on ShadowMount. It was a great run, but it's time to evolve. I've poured everything into VoidShell, which will have live thermal graphs, payload injection, fan curve control, and more. Thank you for the support on this journey. The Void awaits. So yeah, the general idea here is that ShadowMount is essentially not being completely discontinued. It is just going to be bundled into this payload. Sounds like it's going to be something similar to Webman on the PS3, where you will have a web panel that you can use to manage the console with, live graphs, and the ability to inject payloads, fan control, other useful features, and most likely the same kind of ShadowMount features built in, like the ability to scan for game dumps stored on the console, and you'll be able to effectively, launch them remotely from a web panel as well. And we've also got a screenshot shared here showing the package installer that will be built into VoidShell as well to remotely send package files over to the console and install them remotely. So it seems that ShadowMount is effectively going to be transformed into this VoidShell payload instead, which is going to have a lot more features beyond just scanning for your game dumps and creating the shortcuts for the homepage. We also have a new test build of etaHEN version 2.6B and an Itemzflow version 1.15. This new etaHEN build fixes an issue that could prevent the startup notifications from appearing, and a new app plugins feature, which can allow you to set plugins to load only for specific games. So using a plugins.ini file that's stored in the data folder in etaHEN plugins app directory, you can create a plugins.ini file and copy it in there so that you can add plugins to the default section, which will load those plugins when any application is launched. Or you can put a plugin path underneath the title ID of the game in square brackets, and it will only load that plugin when that specific application is launched, making it similar to how the Gold 10 plugins function on the PS4. This can also be managed from within a new app plugin section within the etaHEN toolbox with this version. Now, as for Itemzflow, this test build adds a section in the settings to change the way that the game dump shortcuts are added. There's a new method and an old method, so you can test out both inject methods by switching between them in the settings menu. So that's all the topics I have for this particular video, but just at the end here, I wanted to give a big shout out to all of you guys, a big thank you to everybody who has been supporting the channel so far. Whether you've just joined recently or you've been following since way back in the Xbox 360 days, I really appreciate you guys. I mean, we're almost at 500,000 subscribers, which is absolutely insane. Yeah, and just probably the next day or two we'll cross over to having 500,000 subscribers on this channel, which is absolutely insane that so many people have subscribed over the years. I would never have imagined the channel would ever get anywhere near this number. So yeah, just a big thank you to all of you guys. I know there are many other great channels out there that you can also be watching. The fact that a lot of you guys still continue to watch my content, I super appreciate it. So thank you guys so much for supporting the channel since its inception. I can't thank you guys enough. So as long as you guys continue to watch, I will continue to put out this content for you guys. So anyway, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider subscribing.